You know what they say about birthdays? That they're supposed to be celebrations. Milestones. Moments of joy surrounded by the people who love you most. Well, let me tell you about my 60th birthday. The day I learned that everything I believed about love, family, and loyalty was a goddamn lie wrapped in legal documents and served with a side of humiliation. Picture this. I walk into my own living room expecting maybe a cake, some flowers, hell, even just a happy birthday from the family I'd spent 4 decades building, nurturing, and sacrificing everything for. Instead, I'm greeted by a stack of papers so thick it could choke a horse. Final notices. Divorce papers. Bank account freeze orders. Business transfer documents. And there, sitting pretty on top like a cherry on a shit sundae, was the deed to my house, already signed away. To him. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. But here's the part that still makes my blood boil, even now. My son, my own flesh and blood, the boy I held when he had nightmares, the one I drove to soccer practice every weekend for 12 years, was standing there with his phone out, filming the whole thing like it was some kind of courtroom drama. His finger steady on that record button, capturing every second of what they thought would be my breakdown. And my daughter? Sweet, artistic, sensitive daughter who used to crawl into my lap when she was scared? She was singing Happy Birthday in this mocking, sing-song voice that cut through me like broken glass. They were all laughing. My husband of 38 years, my 2 children, even that smug lawyer they'd hired, all of them laughing like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. The joke was me. The punchline was my pain. But you know what? They underestimated me. They thought I'd crumble. They thought I'd beg. They thought I'd fall to my knees and plead for mercy, for understanding, for just a crumb of the life I'd built with my own 2 hands. Instead, I did something that wiped those grins right off their faces. I took those papers, folded them neatly, every single one, and I whispered, "Thank you." This makes it easier. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Because in that moment, they realized they might have miscalculated. They thought they were dealing with a broken woman. They were wrong. See, what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been listening. For months, I'd been hearing things. Whispers through the laundry chute late at night when they thought I was asleep. My husband's voice, low and conspiratorial, talking to my children about tomorrow being the day she'll own nothing but her old shoes. Another voice too, a woman's voice I didn't recognize at first, already talking about moving her things into what used to be our bedroom. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision born from some midlife crisis. This was an ambush. A carefully orchestrated demolition of my life that had been months in the planning. While I was making their meals, doing their laundry, managing their schedules, and keeping their lives running smoothly, they were plotting my destruction. Every smile, every good morning, every "How was your day, honey?" was a lie covering up their conspiracy. I stood there in that living room, my living room, the one I decorated and cleaned and loved for 20 years, and I felt something die inside me. Not hope. Not love. Something deeper than that. Trust. The fundamental belief that family means something. That marriage vows aren't just pretty words you say once and forget. That when you build a life with someone, you're building it together, not just waiting for the right moment to tear it all down. The walls were covered with family photos. Vacations, graduations, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, decades of memories that suddenly felt like evidence of my own stupidity. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? How could I have loved people who were capable of this level of cruelty? I looked at those pictures and saw ghosts. That smiling woman holding a newborn baby, was that really me, or just some naive fool who believed that love was real? That man standing beside me at our wedding, promising to honor and cherish, was he always planning this moment of ultimate betrayal? Those children opening presents on Christmas morning, were they already calculating how much everything was worth? But you know what didn't break? You know what they couldn't touch? The things that really mattered. I packed light that day. Just one overnight bag. But I took the silver pen my father gave me when I graduated college, the one he'd saved for months to buy. I took my old notebook, filled with sketches and plans for the construction business I'd built from nothing. And I took a faded photograph of my mother, the woman who taught me that strength isn't about never falling down, it's about getting back up no matter how hard they try to keep you down. These weren't just objects. They were pieces of my soul, reminders of who I was before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's victim. They were proof that I existed independent of their validation, their approval, their love. The ambush itself was theater at its most cruel. They'd rearranged the furniture in the living room, pushing everything aside to create this courtroom-like setup. One chair in the center, for me, the defendant in a trial I didn't know I was attending. My husband, my children, and that lawyer sat across from me like judges pronouncing sentence. The documents were laid out with mathematical precision. Divorce papers, business transfer forms, property relinquishment agreements. And outside? Oh, outside was the perfect touch. Neighbors had mysteriously decided that 3 p.m. on a Tuesday was the perfect time to walk their dogs. All of them. At the same time. Right in front of my house. Pretending to be casual while craning their necks to peer through the windows. They wanted witnesses to my humiliation. They wanted the whole neighborhood to see me broken. But I didn't break. I sat in that chair with my back straight and my hands folded. I listened to their prepared speeches about irreconcilable differences and mutual agreement and what's best for everyone. I signed every paper they put in front of me without argument, without pleading, without giving them the satisfaction of my tears. And with every signature, I smiled a little wider. Because I realized something they hadn't counted on. Silence can be a weapon. Compliance can be a strategy. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is give people exactly what they think they want. They expected collapse. They got cooperation. And that scared the hell out of them. When it was over, I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out of that house without a word. I got in my car, the one thing they'd overlooked in their careful planning, and I drove to a rundown motel on the other side of town. I checked in under a fake name with cash I'd been saving from grocery money for months. I turned off my phone. I disappeared. And in that silence, that beautiful, terrifying silence, I began to plan. They wanted me erased. They didn't know that silence can be louder than screams. They didn't know that a woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous creature on earth. They thought they'd won the war by winning the first battle. They had no idea the war was just beginning. You see, while they were plotting my downfall, I was doing something they never suspected. I was preparing for exactly this moment. Not because I saw it coming, God knows I was too blinded by love and trust for that, but because my mother taught me something valuable. Always have a backup plan. Always keep something for yourself. Always remember that the only person you can truly count on is the one looking back at you in the mirror. Hidden away in a safety deposit box they didn't know existed was a ledger. Not just any ledger, a detailed record of every financial transaction, every business deal, every questionable decision my husband had made over the past 15 years. Because here's what loving someone teaches you. You learn their habits, their patterns, their secrets. And when you love someone who's hiding things, you unconsciously start keeping track of those secrets. I called my college roommate Sarah, who'd become a forensic auditor for the FBI. We'd kept in touch over the years, Christmas cards and birthday calls, the usual. But Sarah had always been sharp, always been hungry for justice. When I told her what happened, the silence on her end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said 3 words that changed everything. I'll help you. Next, I called Marcus Chin, a lawyer I'd helped pro bono 5 years earlier when his family's restaurant was being extorted by a local gang. I'd used my construction connections to get him out of a lease that was bleeding him dry, and he'd never forgotten it. Marcus specialized in white-collar crime, and when I explained the situation, his voice went cold with professional interest. The third call was to Detective Rosa Martinez, retired NYPD. She'd investigated a break-in at one of my construction sites years ago, and we developed a friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences as women fighting to succeed in male-dominated fields. Rosa still had contacts, still had access to databases, still had the instincts that had made her one of the best investigators in the city. These weren't just allies. They were weapons. And each one brought something essential to the table. Sarah brought the ability to trace financial crimes across multiple jurisdictions. Marcus brought legal expertise and a network of contacts in district attorney offices. Rosa brought investigative skills and the kind of street smarts you can't learn in law school. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because as we started digging into my husband's finances, as we started following the paper trail of hidden accounts and suspicious transactions, we uncovered something that made my personal betrayal look like a parking ticket. The woman. The mistress who'd been whispering in the shadows, planning to move into my bedroom. Her name was Victoria Sterling, and she wasn't just some young thing looking to steal a rich man. She was a professional. A predator who specialized in wealthy families, particularly wealthy wives who happened to have substantial life insurance policies. 3 previous marriages. 3 wealthy husbands. 2 mysterious deaths and 1 very convenient suicide. Each time, Victoria walked away with everything. Each time, there was just enough ambiguity to avoid criminal charges. Each time, she moved on to the next target with a different name, a different backstory, but the same deadly agenda. My husband wasn't just betraying me for love or money. He was betraying me for survival. Because somewhere along the line, he'd gotten involved with Victoria's operation, whether willingly or through blackmail, we couldn't tell yet. But those birthday papers weren't just about taking my assets. They were about isolating me, making me legally invisible, and positioning me for whatever came next. Suddenly, my children's cruelty took on a different dimension. Were they willing participants in murder, or just useful idiots being manipulated by masters of deception? Either way, they'd chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. The rage that consumed me then wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about survival. It was about justice. It was about making sure that Victoria Sterling never got the chance to destroy another family, never got the chance to turn another woman's children against her, never got the chance to add another mysterious death to her collection. So I did what they never expected a destroyed woman to do. I fought back. But I didn't fight the way they anticipated, with tears and pleas and desperate attempts to win back their love. I fought with precision. I fought with patience. I fought with the accumulated power of 38 years of building relationships, learning secrets, and understanding how the world really works. I compiled everything into 12 sealed envelopes. 1 for the FBI. 1 for the IRS. 1 for the state attorney general. 1 for the local police. 1 for the immigration authorities, because Victoria's documents had some interesting inconsistencies. 1 for the insurance companies that had paid out on those suspicious deaths. 1 for the Bar Association, because that lawyer who'd sat in my living room smugly reading my doom had some ethical violations in his past that needed revisiting. And 1 for the press, because sometimes the court of public opinion is the most powerful court of all. But I didn't just send them out randomly. I uploaded copies to multiple hidden accounts with instructions for automatic release if anything happened to me. I set up a digital dead man switch that would trigger if I didn't check in every 72 hours. I learned from Victoria's mistakes. I made myself too dangerous to disappear. Then I sat back and set the karma clock ticking. Because here's what I'd learned about justice. It doesn't always come when you want it, but it always comes eventually. And sometimes, all it needs is a little help finding its way. The dominoes started falling on a Tuesday morning exactly 2 weeks after my birthday. Government raids, simultaneous investigations, sealed indictments being unsealed. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop for 3 days. 42 missed calls the first day alone. My husband's panicked voice, "Please, you have to help us. They're saying things about Victoria. They're freezing everything. They want to talk to you." My son, no longer cocky, no longer filming. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Dad said it was just about the business, about protecting the family assets. Please call me back. My daughter, her artistic sensitivity finally awakened to the horror of what she'd participated in. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They're saying terrible things about Dad and that woman. They're saying you could have been killed. Please call me back. But I didn't call back. I listened to every voicemail, saved every one, but I didn't respond. Because silence was still my most powerful weapon, and I wasn't ready to put it down yet. Within a week, my husband was arrested on charges of fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. Victoria Sterling, whose real name turned out to be Victoria Petrov, and before that, Victoria Santos, and before that, who knows, was arrested on 3 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. My murder. My son's law career evaporated overnight when his connection to the case became public. No firm wants an associate whose father is on trial for conspiracy to commit murder, especially when that associate was gleefully filming what was supposed to be the victim's destruction. My daughter's art gallery, funded with what we now knew was laundered money, was seized by federal authorities. Every piece of art, every connection, every dream she'd built on the foundation of stolen wealth crumbled in a matter of days. The lawyer who'd read my doom with such smugness? Under investigation for ethics violations, with his license suspended pending review. Turned out he'd known exactly what kind of operation he was facilitating, and he'd done it before. But here's the beautiful irony. While their world was burning down around them, mine was being rebuilt from the ashes. Because reputation has a funny way of working. When you're known as someone who got screwed over by criminals, when you're the victim who fought back, when you're the woman who survived what was supposed to be your own murder, people want to help you. Richard Hawthorne, the owner of Hawthorne Construction, my biggest competitor for 20 years, called me 3 days after the arrests hit the news. Elena, he said, I've been watching what you built, and I've been watching how you've handled this situation. I'm 73 years old, and I need a partner, not a competitor. Are you interested? Am I interested? This man was offering me a partnership in a construction firm that was pulling down $40 million a year in contracts. He was offering me the chance to rebuild my career not from scratch, but from a position of strength I'd never even dreamed of. I signed the partnership agreement in my new apartment. It's small, just a 1-bedroom place downtown, but every inch of it is mine. No ghosts on the walls. No memories of betrayal in the corners. No whispers of conspiracy coming through the laundry chute. That first morning, I made coffee in my own kitchen, in a handmade mug I'd bought from a local artist, not because someone else chose it, not because it matched some grand design scheme, but because I liked the way it felt in my hands. I stood at my window, looking out at a city that suddenly felt full of possibilities instead of threats, and I whispered to myself, this taste is mine alone. You want to know what my favorite moment was in this whole nightmare? It wasn't when my husband was arrested, though that was satisfying. It wasn't when Victoria's mugshot hit the evening news, though seeing her cold, calculating face finally exposed to the world felt like justice. It wasn't even when my son's smug grin disappeared and my daughter's mocking song turned into desperate apologies. My favorite moment was sitting in that chair in my living room, signing those papers while secretly smiling. Because in that moment, I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a woman with a plan. I was a fighter who'd learned to hide her weapons. I was someone who understood that sometimes you have to let people think they've won in order to set up their complete destruction. Every signature on those documents was me buying time. Every compliant nod was me gathering intelligence. Every smile was me saying, go ahead. Give me everything I need to destroy you. They thought they were watching me surrender. They were actually watching me reload. You know what I learned from all this? The people who hurt you the most are usually the ones who underestimate you the most. They think that because they've seen you love them, they've seen you weak. They think that because you've sacrificed for them, you're incapable of sacrifice them. They think that because you've forgiven them before, you'll forgive them again. They're wrong. Love isn't weakness. Sacrifice isn't submission. Forgiveness isn't endless. And a woman who's spent decades building something from nothing knows exactly how to tear something down to nothing when the situation calls for it. My husband is going to spend the next 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Victoria is looking at life without parole in 3 different states. My children are learning what it means to live in the real world without mommy and daddy's money to cushion every fall. And me? I'm rebuilding my life stronger, smarter, and more successful than it's ever been. The construction partnership with Richard has already landed us 2 major municipal contracts worth $12 million combined. I'm designing affordable housing projects that will actually help families instead of exploiting them. I'm mentoring young women who want to break into construction, teaching them not just about building structures, but about building the kind of inner strength that can survive any betrayal. And late at night, when I'm alone in my small, perfect apartment, I sometimes allow myself to feel something I haven't felt in years. Proud. Proud of my strength. Proud of my intelligence. Proud of my ability to turn the worst day of my life into the first day of my real life. They wanted to erase me. Instead, they erased themselves. They wanted to leave me with nothing. Instead, they freed me from everything that was holding me back. They wanted to make me disappear. Instead, they revealed exactly who they really were and who I really am. I'm not a victim. I'm not a survivor. I'm not even someone who got her revenge, though I'll admit the revenge was sweet. I'm a woman who learned that sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need, even when it comes wrapped in the worst possible package. Sometimes the greatest gift is discovering that you never needed the people who betrayed you. Sometimes the most liberating moment is realizing that their love was never real anyway, so losing it isn't actually a loss. Sometimes the most empowering thing that can happen to you is being forced to face the world entirely on your own terms. They thought my 60th birthday was going to be the end of my story. They were right about one thing: it was the end. The end of Elena the doormat. The end of Elena the enabler. The end of Elena, who believed that family loyalty was more important than self-respect. But it was also the beginning. The beginning of Elena the businesswoman. The beginning of Elena the fighter. The beginning of Elena who understands that silence can be louder than screams, that patience can be more powerful than rage, and that sometimes the best revenge is living so well that your enemy's destruction becomes irrelevant to your happiness. So here's my question for you. Which moment gave you the most satisfaction? Was it when I signed those papers with a secret smile, knowing I was setting a trap? Was it when the federal agents kicked down their door at dawn? Was it when my son's law career crumbled? Was it when my daughter lost her gallery? Was it when my husband realized he'd been played by a serial killer? Or was it when I walked into that new partnership meeting, shook hands with Richard Hawthorne, and started building something bigger and better than anything I'd lost? Drop it in the comments. Tell me which moment of justice felt the sweetest to you. Like this video if you believe that silence only protects the liars. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about what happens when the underestimated fight back. Because here's what I know now. The people who try to destroy you usually end up destroying themselves. The people who try to erase you usually end up erasing their own futures. And the people who think they can break you usually discover that they've just freed you to become someone stronger than they could ever imagine. My name is Elena Martinez. I'm 60 years old. I'm a construction executive, a mentor, and a woman who learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing that could have happened to you. And I'm just getting started.